A pathological liar is chosen to test a newly developed companion robot and make it more human-like. This challenges his methods of deception and his views about love. Chattanyan offers his old classmate, Arakel, as the ideal candidate for their experiment. He knows that despite being a pathological liar, Arakel has sold his house and sent all his money to his mother in America. This puts Arakel in a huge debt. Hearing this, Chattanyan's boss, Marashlian, accepts him for their experiment. The next day, Arakel's date reminds him that he promised to take her to the amusement park after their time together. He tries to reason his way out of this, but the woman threatens him. Just then, Arakel's landlord, Margarita, arrives. The man leads her to the living room to let his date sneak out, but Margarita hears the woman shut the door. She then demands his rent, and Arakel promises to pay her in a week. Margarita knows that he's lying, so she advises him to find a decent woman and get his life straight. Arakel assures her that he's got one already. He later attends a dancing competition with Milena. However, he sees the loan shark, Razmik, and his thug, Drat, watching them, making him nervous. The man catches up to him in the restroom and demands him to pay his debt. Arakel then reveals that Milena's father is the owner of a liquor company, so he'll marry her and use their wedding budget to pay him back. However, Razmik only gives him 4 days. As a backup plan, Arakel tries to sell his bar, but since it hasn't been popular, he calls in some friends to pretend to be customers, offering their drinks for free. However, the drinks are just apple juice since they're saving money. Soon, Arakel's buyer arrives, and the man lies that their bar is always packed. However, one of his friends complains about the apple juice, which the buyer hears. This blows Arakel's deception. The next day, Chattanyan finally takes Arakel to meet Marashlian, who explains that they created a feminine robot with a neural network that mimics a living organism. Arakel thinks that they want to test the robot in his bar to entertain guests, but Chattanyan corrects him. They intend for the robot to replace people in various fields. However, they need the robots to learn human emotions to ensure that they have empathy, so they've created synthetic hormones for them. To ensure that it works, they need one of the robots to live with Arakel for a month. They then take him to the robotics warehouse where he meets the robotic system with artificial intelligence, or Rosalie. Arakel argues that she doesn't look like a real person, but Marashlian assures him that this isn't the final product. In exchange for testing the product, Arakel will receive 20 million drams. Despite this, Arakel claims that he's about to marry the heir to a liquor company, so he can easily get 20 million drams. With that, he exits. Still, Chattanyan assures his boss that Arakel will be crawling back to them soon. Soon enough, Arakel meets his fiancé's father, Shagan, who admits that he wanted to have the man beaten up. However, Milena insisted that she's in love, so Shagan decides to give them a chance. Despite this, Shagan refuses to let Arakel handle any of the wedding planning and budget. Instead, Arakel will be assigned to pay for Milena's dress. With no choice, Arakel calls Chattanyan and accepts the deal, though he makes a list of what the robot should look like. The two later meet for the contract signing, though Arakel worries about the robot malfunctioning. Chattanyan assures him that it's state-of-the-art and is already worth millions in materials and labor. Hearing this, Arakel wonders if they can just sell the robot themselves, but this just annoys his friend. Just then, Arakel spots a gorgeous woman arriving. Thinking that she's Rosalie, he immediately starts complaining that she's not exactly like he requested, even touching the woman to prove it. The woman suddenly kicks him, and Chattanyan tells Arakel that she's not the robot. After she leaves, Rosalie finally arrives, and Arakel quickly invites the robot to dance. That night, Arakel takes her to his apartment, and the robot cleans up and even cooks for him, much to his delight. After dinner, Arakel tries flirting with her, but the robot doesn't understand his hints. Arakel calls Chattanyan to complain, and the scientist explains that, like with a real woman, he needs to win Rosalie over before her intimacy feature gets activated. Milena then calls Arakel, inviting him to pick out her wedding dress tomorrow. And so, Arakel goes out the next day and withdraws money before heading to the bridal salon. Upon arriving, however, Razmik corners him since his 4 days have passed. The man explains that he hasn't gotten the wedding budget yet, though he gives him half of the money he withdrew as partial payment. Razmik accepts this just before Milena spots them. Arakel lies that Razmik is his tailor, and the man starts charming her and even offers to help in choosing her dress. With this, Milena leads them to the salon. Meanwhile, Margarita rides the elevator with Ando, who flirts with her. The two arrive at Arakel's floor and see Rosalie exiting the man's apartment. At the salon, Razmik comments how a woman is like a light to a man's life, so they must choose a dress that symbolizes that glow. His compliments make Milena blush. Just then, Arakel receives a call from Margarita, who accuses him of selling his apartment to Rosalie. She threatens to get the police involved, so Arakel hurriedly asks Razmik to return his money, claiming that he needs to purchase something for the wedding. Not wanting to raise Milena's suspicions, Razmik begrudgingly returns the cash. Arakel then heads home to pay Margarita and tells her that Rosalie is his girlfriend, which the woman doubts since she's out of his league. Right after, Tsatanyan calls Arakel, directing him to take Rosalie out so they can see how she interacts with others. He also receives a voicemail from Milena, who gushes over Razmik's taste in fashion. With his help, she has chosen her dress, which costs 9.5 million drams. This is more expensive than he thought, but Arakel has no choice but to pay for it. Rosalie then arrives with Ando helping her carry her groceries. She greets Arakel happily, and Ando mourns how the man got such a beautiful woman. After he's gone, Arakel confronts Rosalie about leaving the house, but she explains that she just bought groceries using the credit card from the laboratory. Seeing a new source of income, Arakel takes the credit card and uses it to buy a bouquet for Rosalie on their way to his bar. When Rosalie smells the flowers, the scientists detect the first synthetic hormone produced in her system. At the bar, Arakel and Rosalie meet another of his old friends, Artak, who's into cryptocurrency. Arakel is interested in getting into the business, but when he raises the topic, Rosalie mentions that Artak's company has gone bankrupt. The man is surprised that she knows this, more so when Rosalie shares her knowledge about the trade. Artak tries to change the topic, so Rosalie addresses his date, who shares that she teaches Japanese poetry. To everyone's surprise, the robot recites a Japanese poem, so Arakel lies that Rosalie studied in Tokyo for 2 years. Suspicious, Artak asks to speak to his friend in private. He questions Arakel how he ended up with such a smart woman like Rosalie, and the man insists that she's in love with him. However, Artak points out that he's a liar who's swimming in debt, so it's unlikely for someone to fall in love with him. He apologizes for being blunt about this, but he refuses to play along further since he also knows he's engaged to Milena. With that, Artak leaves with his date. Unbeknownst to him, his words cut Arakel deeply. Still, he puts up a smile when Rosalie greets him from afar. Suddenly, Razmik approaches him. Having seen his interaction with Rosalie, he accuses him of cheating on Milena. Arakel lies that Rosalie is a performer for his bar, and as if on cue, the woman starts singing on stage. This convinces Razmik, so he leaves. Arakel then continues watching Rosalie as he starts getting enamored by her. They continue their date at the amusement park, and upon arriving home, Rosalie prepares a Japanese dinner for her partner. Arakel asks why she sang at the bar, so she explains that she was reading his and Razmik's lips, so she performed to help him. However, she questions why people lie, and Arakel explains that it's to get what they can. Rosalie argues that everything in their world can be solved mathematically, and in this principle, lies cannot exist. Arakel thinks otherwise since society has allowed liars to take what they want. The robot concludes that humans can also deceive her, so Arakel advises her to learn how to avoid it. With this, the robot asks him to teach her. For the rest of the night, Arakel teaches Rosalie manipulation through card games. The robot quickly learns and beats Arakel at every round. She then calculates that her success rate in card games is now at 98%. This gives Arakel another idea. Soon, the scientists see that Rosalie has researched the locations of nearby casinos. Playing at casinos might draw attention to her, so they activate Rosalie's intimate features to distract Arakel. This has the robot suddenly seducing Arakel. This works as the man happily joins her in the bedroom. However, it goes on throughout the night, and, by morning, Arakel is too tired to perform. He calls Tsatanyan to report how insatiable Rosalie is, so the scientist suggests lowering her appetite. Just then, Rosalie starts searching for Arakel, but before she can drag him back to bed, her system gets updated, ending her intimacy session. She then recalls that they were supposed to go to the casino, so the couple heads there next. Rosalie easily wins using precise calculations, earning Arakel a lot of money. While heading home, Arakel mentions how the men at the casino were envious of him because of Rosalie. He's never felt that sense of pride before, and in his delight, he asks to kiss the woman. Rosalie nods, and the two share a kiss. However, they're soon confronted by Shagan, who accuses the man of cheating on his daughter. Arakel lies that Rosalie is his sister who just arrived from America, and the robot speaks in English to be more convincing. Charmed by the woman, Shagan backs off. Back at home, Rosalie asks why Arakel told the man that she's his sister, so he confesses that he's engaged to Shagan's daughter. Hearing that Arakel has another lady makes Rosalie feel the urge to smash a statue over his head. Meanwhile, the scientists detect that Rosalie's system is flooded with numerous synthetic hormones, which suggests that she's feeling jealousy and anger. Worried about what she'll do, Marashlian orders his staff to turn off the hormones. However, they argue that her jealousy indicates her strong attachment to Arakel. With that, they allow Rosalie to throw the statue at him, which he dodges. The action satisfies the robot's rage, so she no longer feels like harming him anymore. Instead, she's interested in repeating their previous night's activity. Despite the scientists having disabled Rosalie's intimacy feature, she managed to activate it on her own. This gives them hope that Rosalie is having desires like a real person. With this, Arakel prepares to be intimate with Rosalie again, only to find Razmik and Drat in his home. They learned about Arakel's winnings at the casino, so Razmik takes his entire winnings as payment for his debt and for keeping Arakel's secret lover from Shagan and Milena. He then scolds Arakel for betraying Milena and orders him to confess to the woman. The next morning, Shagan finds his daughter happily conversing with Razmik. He later calls and asks Arakel to meet. There, Shagan hints that he's interested in Rosalie. Arakel refuses this, and Shagan sympathizes with how this arrangement will make their family tree complicated. However, he insists that they can figure it out over dinner, so he invites them to his restaurant tonight. Afraid that his cover will be blown, Arakel hurries back home and tells Rosalie that Shagan has fallen for her, so they have to make it look like she went back to America. However, Rosalie believes they need to face this problem, so she tells him to trust her. With that, they join Shagan for dinner that night, though Arakel spots Milena and Razmik arriving at the restaurant as well. Before Shagan notices them, Arakel excuses himself and leaves to check on the other two. With him away, Shagan asks Rosalie what she thinks of him, and the woman comments that he seems to be loyal to the people he loves, even after their deaths. For example, he named a wine after his late wife, suggesting that he hasn't fully recovered from her death. However, he's also looking for someone to fill the hole in his heart. She thinks this is a mistake since he's already found his kindred spirit, and this is the only way to truly fall in love. Meanwhile, Arakel confronts Milena and Razmik, but the man cryptically reminds him that he was supposed to confess his unfaithfulness. Otherwise, he'll tell Shagan about his relationship with Rosalie. This forces Arakel to back off, though he finds Shagan already leaving. He asks Rosalie what happened, and the robot explains that she has understood that people lie often because they're afraid of the truth. And so, she told Shagan the truth about his views of love. Because of this, Milena later finds him reminiscing about his wife. She uses this time to confess that she doesn't want to marry Arakel anymore. Instead, she wants to be with Razmik. Shagan doesn't mind this since he sees that Razmik is her kindred spirit. Meanwhile, Arakel finds Rosalie asleep as she has developed synthetic melatonin to make her sleep. This shows that she's truly advancing to mimic humans, so Marashlian wants to recall her earlier than expected. The next day, Arakel lives the best time of his life as he's able to pay rent and even gives money to a homeless person. He also enjoys time at his bar before peacefully breaking things off with Milena. Later on, Shagan arrives at his bar to confront Arakel, but when Milena calls him to report that they've smoothened things out, he decides to just enjoy a drink. While there, he spots Arakel's singer and is immediately drawn to her. Arakel soon arrives home, only to find that Rosalie and her belongings aren't there. He calls Tsatinyan, who tells him that since their tests are done, they've taken her back. This breaks Arakel's heart, so he begs them to let him speak to her one last time. The scientists agree, as long as they get to decide where they'll meet, and he'll forget about Rosalie afterward. Eventually, Arakel and Rosalie meet. He immediately asks the robot to elope with him, but Rosalie knows she's not a real person, so they can't get married or have children together. Instead, she thanks him for making her human-like. To their surprise, Rosalie sheds tears. Suddenly, Rosalie freezes as Tsatinyan deactivates her. A group of men then arrive to collect the robot, but Arakel senses that something is wrong. He questions if Marashlian knows about the men taking her now, and Tsatinyan assures him that he'll call his boss once he's on vacation, revealing that he sold Rosalie without the company's permission. Refusing to let Rosalie fall into the wrong hands, Arakel prepares to defend her, but gets outnumbered. Just then, Razmik and Drat arrive and fight off Tsatinyan's thugs. Razmik tracked Arakel down to reimburse him for Milena's dress, refusing to be in the man's debt. He then asks if he's touched Milena, and Arakel assures him that he was too scared of Shagan to do so before the wedding. This appeases Razmik, so he decides to defend the man. As he does, Arakel tries to go to Rosalie but is easily subdued. The robot witnesses this and reactivates herself. She saves Arakel and takes down several of their enemies, but stops when Satinyan holds Arakel at gunpoint. Rosalie recalls her happy memories with Arakel, so to save him, she surrenders to the thugs. Still, Arakel refuses to let her go, so he runs to her, and the men shoot. Quickly, Rosalie shields the man from the bullets, thus destroying the robot. Just then, the police storm the place and arrest Satinyan and the thugs. In the next several months, Margarita becomes involved with Ando, while Shagan helps the bar singer fulfill her dreams of being a recorded artist. Razmik and Milena are also married and have opened a new fashion brand together. Marashlian and his team also proceed with the new line of Rosalie robots. 3 years later, Marashlian calls Arakel to learn about Rosalie's new development, which transcends what they estimated from their robots. As it turns out, they manage to fix Rosalie, who's now about to give birth. Arakel asserts that their child is conceived out of love, not from their laboratory. Marashlian argues that their baby's genes were still developed by their android's synthetic ones. But to Arakel, this doesn't matter. He asserts that he's the father of this child and hangs up. Rosalie compliments him for getting the scientists to back off. And so, they proceed to the hospital to give birth to the first human-android hybrid.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.